All right, let's dive right into this explainer and explore exactly how we measure the true impact of the high-stakes pharmaceutical industry. And we're talking way beyond just its profit margins. You know, it's super easy to look at a biopharma giant and just see the revenue numbers, but the underlying health of these companies relies on an incredibly complex web of responsibilities. So today, we're unpacking exactly how that is measured using a standardized, globally recognized framework.
With billions of dollars and, honestly, millions of lives on the line, we really need a reliable framework to track actual corporate health. And that is exactly where the SASB standards come in. The Sustainability Accounting Standards Board, which is now under the International Sustainability Standards Board, created a highly specific set of metrics just for the biotechnology and pharmaceutical sector. And this isn't about, vague corporate goodwill. It is about identifying sustainability-related risks and opportunities that directly affect a company's cash flows and their cost of capital.
So sustainability in pharma isn't just about recycling or green energy. It is a massive, comprehensive framework covering 9 very specific pillars. We're tracking everything from the safety of clinical trial participants and access to medicines, right down to the nitty-gritty of supply chain management and business ethics. It's essentially a comprehensive scorecard for the entire sector.
To make this huge list a bit more digestible, we're going to group these into 4 logical chapters. 1. The patient impact. 2. The product integrity. 3. The corporate compass. And 4. The operations. Let's start right in with Chapter 1, the patient impact, which covers clinical trials, access, and pricing.
When you dig into the actual SASB metrics, you see that companies are forced to disclose some pretty hard data. For example, they have to report the total amount of monetary losses from legal proceedings associated with clinical trials in developing countries. They also have to track which of their products are actually on the World Health Organization's list of pre-qualified medicinal products, as well as any initiatives they have targeting priority diseases. It really forces absolute transparency on their global health contributions.
And when tracking affordability, the standard forces companies to translate complex industry jargon into real numbers by comparing 2 distinct prices. They have to report the percentage change in the weighted average list price, which is the wholesale acquisition cost, versus the net price. Now, the net price is what's left after all the rebates, discounts, and returns. By comparing the sticker price to that net price across their portfolio and highlighting the product with the largest increase, investors and the public can see exactly what pricing strategies the company is actually relying on.
Moving right along to Chapter 2, the product integrity, focusing specifically on drug safety and counterfeit drugs. The standard demands some meticulous logging here. We're talking product recalls, including the total number of units recalled. Companies have to list products that show up in public medical safety or adverse event databases, like the WHO's VIGI-base, but it also tracks the very end of the product's life, requiring them to report the exact metric tons of product accepted for safe take-back, reuse, or disposal. That's absolutely crucial to prevent abuse and environmental release.
Now, here's where it gets intense. The framework absolutely does not shy away from sobering metrics. It explicitly requires the disclosure of the total number of fatalities associated with all the products a company manufactures. This strips away any marketing spin and provides a very raw, unfiltered look at the most severe safety risks a company's portfolio might pose.
And of course, maintaining integrity means fighting fakes. The standard tracks the number of actions a company takes to aid authorities. Honestly, it almost reads like a high-stakes detective story. The company must report how often their actions lead to raids, the seizure of counterfeit products, and the actual arrests or filing of criminal charges against counterfeiters. It really proves whether or not a company is actively defending its supply chain and protecting consumers from substandard, dangerous fakes.
Let's shift gears to Chapter 3, the corporate compass, which covers ethical marketing and business ethics.
A massive risk in pharma is exactly how these drugs are sold. Companies are required by the SASB framework to detail their code of ethics, specifically governing the promotion of off-label uses. Off-label promotion is simply when a drug is marketed for a use that hasn't been formally approved by regulatory authorities. The standard requires companies to explain their enforcement mechanisms, think disciplinary actions, internal audits, and regulatory review committees, just to prevent this exact practice.
Because as you might guess, when that ethical compass fails, the financial impact is extremely severe. The ultimate scorecard tracks exactly how much money a company bleeds in legal proceedings. The metrics specifically demand the disclosure of total monetary losses as a result of legal proceedings associated with false marketing claims, as well as losses from corruption and bribery. It gives stakeholders a direct, undeniable window into the financial cost of unethical behavior.
Finally, we hit Chapter 4, the operations, where we evaluate employee retention and the supply chain.
Look, the biotechnology industry relies on a highly constrained talent pool of specialized scientists. So to measure workforce health, SASB demands a rigorous breakdown of employee turnover. Companies have to report voluntary turnover, like resignations, versus involuntary turnover, like dismissals. And they even have to segment this data by management level. It's a really powerful leading indicator of whether a company can actually retain the brilliant minds they need to invent their next blockbuster drug.
But those brilliant minds are completely useless if the physical ingredients they're working with are compromised. To prevent supply disruptions and protect consumer health, companies must disclose the percentage of their own facilities and their Tier 1 suppliers' facilities that participate in rigorous third-party audits. A prime example highlighted by the standard is the RX360 International Pharmaceutical Supply Chain Consortium Audit Program. Simply put, if a company's direct suppliers aren't being independently audited for ingredient integrity, the entire operation is at massive risk.
So, wrapping up the chapters, that brings us to Section 5, Why Measuring Matters. The source material makes it crystal clear that managing these 9 pillars effectively does 3 absolutely crucial things. First, it mitigates severe regulatory risks like enforcement actions from the FDA. Second, it directly safeguards global consumer health by catching bad batches and preventing counterfeit drugs. And third, by generating incremental revenue and avoiding massive legal fines, it ultimately protects long-term shareholder value.
Knowing what we know now about the massive stakes involved, from the safety of a patient in a trial all the way to the integrity of a raw ingredient in a distant factory, it leaves us with one critical question. If we aren't measuring a pharmaceutical company's sustainability scorecard, can we ever truly say we understand its financial health? Thanks for watching.